Thôi vậy sẵn đi, vậy sẵn một metro về.
Thôi để metro về đi chứ tội nghiệp ông bay. Thấy không? Tội nghiệp ta chạy tới chạy lui tốn nhiều thời giờ quá. Hôm trước mình đi bộ ngang rồi đó.
Giro, opera sastuno Romania kato.
Maybe close.
A ver.
By Georgia. Go to Munich.
Right now we're heading to the Nijmegen Castle.
We just arrive Munich.
We start from Munich airport at 7 a.m. and then hopefully it will take about a little bit more than an hour, maybe an hour and a half to get there. Sky is kind of cloudy, but the road is very nice road. City, which is Munich. Vâng, lo tại vì trong bản đồ nó sẽ phải đi qua thành phố. Ngừng giữa đường mà đi tìm cũng mất tới đấy, không có ai, trừ có cây xăng á. Đây này, bác nhìn đằng trước đây nè, coi nè.
Coi bên này là cái gì này? Coi coi giờ coi.
Bởi vì anh quắt lên như vậy là không có vô bên trong được đâu. Go inside you cannot. Cái từ đi bộ lên trên cũng là 1 tiếng rồi, lên 25 phút, xuống 25 phút, 50 phút. Nó nói đi xe lửa làm sao tới đâu đó, mấy giờ mới tới đó.
Một cái tour đó nhiều không?
Cái tour có 30 mấy euro à.
Bao nhiêu?
Ừ. 37 euro à, mà including train ticket luôn á.
Còn anh trên.
Anh train nếu mà vô trong thì 12 euro mình phải pay. Người lớn á, còn con nít thì dưới 18 tuổi thì free. Như vậy đó.
Cái sắc đó. Beautiful. That's like Michigan. Oh, beautiful in Chicago. Chicago Children's Museum.
Bring safety announcements. Voyagers, United States Coast Guard passenger inspecting vessel. We've done inspection. We do carry life jackets for everyone on board. Life jacket is located in the big white box down the center aisle here on the starboard right-hand side of the closet. We also have heads and restrooms. Ladies on the port left-hand side, gentlemen on the starboard right-hand side. Also have a bar, once again, down the center aisle. As that is your bartender. Please feel free to go back and see him at any time throughout this tour. Your industrial tour guide this morning, Victor, he'll be teaching about Chicago's history and architecture down the river for the next 75 minutes. If you have any questions, please feel free to find any one of our uniformed crew members to be happy to assist you. Get on the way here, sit back, relax, and enjoy.
And as soon as we clear the bridge, I'm going to be starting out on the left-hand side with about a block and a half in front of us. Now, just to the right of that very tall white building, which is over 1,000 feet tall, just to the right of it, notice the building that has a wavy texture pattern to the floor plate as the building rises in height. And notice how the reflective glass here on the east face creates another floor. The building there with the waves, that is called Aqua. That is the tallest building in North America, designed by a female-led architectural firm, Studio Gang Architects. The architect's name is Jeannie Gang. She's headquartered right here in Chicago. Now, the number 4 was not really placed there on purpose. It was kind of a fluke. Notice where there are no balconies, that is where the glass is most reflective to help keep the ultraviolet rays of the sun from entering the building. Where you have a balcony that is going to cast shade across the pane of glass below it, that pane need not be reflective. It is a mixed-use building rising to a height of 859 feet. I'll tell you about that tall white building momentarily, which again is currently the city of Chicago's 3rd tallest. Now, it was announced about 3 months ago that Chicago could potentially be getting a brand new 3rd tallest building. And according to the articles, the structure will be 89 floors, 1,150 feet in height. We built directly here to our left in this gap along Wacker Drive. Now, we already knew the Jeannie Gang and her firm had been commissioned to do another high-rise in this area. But when that press release came out, her name, nor was her firm's name attached to that project. However, I have been able to confirm that it is her firm. Now, things are pretty preliminary. The design more than likely will be tweaked a little bit. But this is the rendering that came out with that press release, if I can find it. Here we go. We're passing right here. It's called The Coast, designed by BKL Architecture out of Chicago. And 1 block behind the coast to our left in the gap with the blue tinted glass, you know, the gap's a bit more than halfway up on either side connected with the columns. That is a current home of Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Illinois. Now, if you had taken this tour 6 years ago, where you see the columns and gap halfway up, that is how tall the building was. 33 floors from 1996. But it was designed so if they wanted to expand, you could take off the roof and add 24 more floors, which is exactly what they did. Now personally, I like to point out gaps and spaces in between buildings as it can be very visually interesting. Like directly here to our left with the colors, shapes, and textures of these three slammed together. We have the triangular shaped Swiss Hotel from 1988 by Harry Weiss. In the background, you have the horizontal wavy lines of Aqua from 2009. And on the corner, we have the vertical lines of this office building, 1979. And once again, to our left down Columbus, currently the city of Chicago's third tallest building, and the tallest building in the world to have its name changed. Twice. Originally the Standard Oil Building, Big Stand, then the Emeco Building, it is now Aon Center. 83 floors, 1,136 feet. And it was the world's tallest marble-clad building when constructed. However, it no longer is. Now, because a taller building has been built covering marble, that building no longer is clad with very thin Carrara marble. Back in the mid 1980s, they realized that thin marble was cracking and buckling, was in danger of falling off the building. Whoops. Didn't hold up too well to the freeze-thaw cycle that we have every year and have had every year in this area since the completion of planet Earth. They had to totally reclad the building with granite from North Carolina, a project that cost about $80 million. And right next door to it, the structure that kind of looks like a sharpened pencil or a rocket ship about to blast off into space, that is Prudential Plaza number 2 from 1990, designed by Lobo, Schlossman, and Happel. Rises to a height of 995 feet to the very top and tip of that spire. This modernist box of a building here to our right currently just goes by its address, 401 North Michigan Avenue, 1965, designed by Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill, which is originally called the Equitable Life Assurance Company building. But more importantly, is the building coming into view right beyond it to our right with the American flag on top. We're going to have the beautiful Neo-Gothic Tribune Tower here from 1925. Now, back in 1922, the paper sponsored an international grand prize of $100,000 to any architect that can design the world's most beautiful office building. There were over 250 entries, and that their design won. Submitted by two New York architects, John B. Tao and Raymond Hood. Raymond Hood would on to help design Rockefeller Center in New York. You walk around the base of Tribune, you'll see there's stones embedded within the base from very famous places and spaces from around the world, like the Great Wall of China, Taj Mahal, pyramids of Egypt, and Cathedral Notre Dame, the Berlin Wall. This is the double-decker Michigan Avenue Bridge from 1920. The first large-scale commercial office building to be built on North Michigan Avenue is the Wrigley Building directly here to our right. The section along the river is 1921. The northern half is 1924. I'll go into further detail about this structure upon our return trip. But directly here before us, we have this tall reflective glass building with that needle-like spire on top. This is the city of Chicago's second tallest building. The height of the structure includes the very top and tip of that spire. That is not a broadcast antenna, that is a spire, so it counts in the height. Anyone want to take a guess as to the name of the building? Anyone? Exactly. Trump International Hotel and Tower. Completed back in 2009, designed by Adrian Smith, formerly of Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. 96 stories, 1,389 feet. Notice as the building ascends in height, we have setbacks at different levels which relate to the roof lines and surrounding structures. First setback to the roof line of the Wrigley building. Second setback to a building right across the river. Third setback to the building next door. Notice the reflective qualities and properties of the glass. For during evening hours when it's dark out, the glass is clear and transparent. You can see directly in that space. And then you will notice the floors 3 through 12 is a parking garage for the building. During evening hours, you can see the columns rising up behind the glass, creating a silhouette effect. Floors 18 to 30, you have hotel rooms. From there to the top are condominiums. The building itself cost about $850 million to build. As soon as we clear Wabash into our right, we're going to have the Steel and Glass International Style Mott, which as you can see has a very nice and subtle shade and shadow effect because of the vertical steel mullions. Originally one IBM Plaza, and now the American Medical Association Plaza. Completed back in 1972, it was designed by German-born Chicago-based architect Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, whose very famous motto was less is more. We like to strip buildings down to a bare minimal. That is a great example of the minimalist design. It is the tallest building that Mies designed in the United States at 695 feet and was completed a few years after his death. About a year and a half ago, they finished converting the lower third into a boutique hotel. Here to our right, commonly referred to as being the Twin Top Towers. In reality, here we have Marina City, built between 1960 to 64, designed by architect Bertrand Goldberg, who went to Germany to study under Mies van der Rohe at a school called the Bauhaus. First 18 floors of both buildings are reserved for parking, the upper portion are condominiums. Notice how the balconies remind you of the petal on the flower. Here along the base is a small marina. There was in fact a movie partially filmed here in Chicago back in 1980 called The Hunter, starring Steve McQueen, the last movie he ever did. There was a car chase at the parking ramp of this West Tower. There was a car shot off into the river and they stuck for that movie. That stuff was reenacted about 7 or 8 years ago for an all-state commercial. Now again, I like to point out gaps in the spaces in between buildings as can be very visually interesting. Notice how the space here to our right is being uniquely framed by the textures of these three buildings. First, we have the dark tinted bay windows of the Western Chicago River North, 1987, originally the Hotel Nico. In the background, you have the flat reflective glass of the modern 353 North Clark by Lohan Anderson Architects, 2009. And here to our right, we have the vertical stainless steel mullions of 321 North Clark Street, 1988 by Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. As soon as we do clear Clark, coming up to our right, we're going to have this beautiful red brick and terracotta clad structure running horizontally along the river in a prairie school design. This is the Reed Burnout Warehouse building from 1913, designed by architect George C. Nimitz. Notice the clock tower in the top central part that was designed to help hide and conceal the water tank to control the original sprinkler system. When built, the building here was perfectly symmetrical, but now notice that the left-hand side is in fact one base shorter than the right-hand side. That is because when they built this bridge across the river here back in the late 1920s and widened the roadway, they demolished the westernmost bay of the building and they reclad what was left to look like it originally did. For many years, it was home to the city of Chicago's traffic court. And I'm certainly proud to say I never had to familiarize myself with the inside. It is now home to Encyclopedia Britannica. Rising up 780 feet here from the river's edge, we have the modern 300 North LaSalle, designed by Picard Filton Architects out of New Haven, Connecticut. Clad with an abundance of glass and stainless steel. Completed back in 2009, the building was sold over the summer for $850 million. And as you can see, it stands in total contrast to the structure right next to it, which is a great example of the Chicago school style of architecture. You have the solid base anchoring the building into the ground. You have the shaft drawing your eye up. The corners going around the top finishes it off. This was a tea and coffee warehouse when it was completed back in 1912. Now this unbelievably huge and just ginormous building here to our right is called the Merchandise Mart. Completed back in 1931, at that time, this was the world's largest building, having more than 4.25 million square feet of space within its walls. So massive in fact that up until about 7 or 8 years ago, the building had its own zip code. And is now being shared throughout the area. We have the 8 bronze busts running here along the river. They represent some of the Prince merchants of the United States, including Philemon, Woolworth, Wanamaker, Marshall Field, and a few more. The building was commissioned for and by the president of the Marshall Field Corporation. It was intended to be their wholesale warehouse and distribution center. Their plans, however, did not really materialize because 1931, the country was at the height of the Great Depression. They sold the building in 1945 for about half its value to Joseph Kennedy, father President John Kennedy. The Kennedys also used to own the next building coming up here to our right called the Apparel Mart. They sold both buildings back in 1998 for we get more than $600 billion. However, they did retain ownership of the land here to our right, jutting out to the river called Wolf Point. This is where the three branches come together. Main branch we just came down, south branch veering off to our left, north branch veering off here to our right. But again, as you can see, Wolf Point here has become a construction site. That is because 2 years ago, a major planned development was approved to be built here to your right at Wolf Point. That planned development includes the construction of 3 high-rises. Right now, they're working on the underground parking, which is going to serve all 3 buildings. The first tower is slowly but surely rising, the shortest of the 3. A roughly 50-story tall rental tower along the north branch of the river there is only going to be about 500 feet tall. Dead center at the peak, a roughly 90-story tall mixed-use building, about 950 feet in height, hopefully goes taller. That site is much too much visually important for anything of any architectural or vertical mediocrity. On the east side of the site, nearest the mart, a roughly 75-story tall mixed-use building, about 750 feet in height. And also, directly here to our right, notice we have these 2 small cranes directly here to our right, right beyond this one. Also a construction site. In the next 30 months, we're going to be looking, if we take this tour again, and we'll be looking at this roughly 50-story tall office building directly there to our right called River Point, designed by Picard Chilton Architects out of New Haven, Connecticut. The building is going to rise to a height of 730 feet there once everything is said and done. Phase 1 was decked over the train tracks. Those porthole-like openings are fans to vent the diesel exhaust from inside the tunnel. As soon as we clear Lake Street coming up here to our right, we're going to have almost twins. You'll also see an incident that happened on the Chicago River a week and a half ago. This barge totally sank. It's split in half. They've been trying to figure out how to salvage it right now. They have it towed up over to the side. But here to our right, we have almost twins, the former Butler Brothers warehouse buildings. The one there in the background, 1912, by D.H. Burnham and Company. The one directly here to our right, 1922, by Graham Anderson, Probst and White. The one here to our right has been renovated. They hung balconies off the face, and people now live in that space. And yes, very soon, they will start to lose their views. As you can see, we have a few cranes directly here to our right as well, so they can build this roughly 53-story tall office building directly here to our right. 150 North Riverside Plaza, designed by Getz Architects. The building is going to rise to a height of 745 feet once everything is said and done. So, the 2 office buildings side by side across the street from one another, you're going to in fact end up with 3 acres of landscape open public space downtown along the river, which is not too bad for a dense urban environment. Here to our right, we have the headquarters to Boeing, the plane and aerospace giant that moved to Chicago back in 2001. The building itself was completed back in 1992, and it was designed by Ralph Johnson of the firm Perkins & Will. The train tracks I was mentioning before, they go directly under the building and onto Chicago's Union Station. Under the last 1, 2, 3, 4 bays, at the base, there's a switching point where the train tracks crisscross one another. It's very dense. Not a lot of room to drill the K-size of foundations to help hold up the very tall buildings. Under the southeast corner here, not a problem. Under the southwest corner, problem. Train tracks. That corner is hanging out in midair. How's it being supported? Well, as soon as we cleared the Washington Boulevard Bridge, if you look to the very top of that same building up there, you have that steel truss system on top, which is being anchored back into the tower and to the east side of the building, supporting that southwest corner. That corner is what you call being cantilevered. Think of a diving board for a swimming pool, where one end is anchored to the earth, while the diving board hangs out over the water. And here to our right, we have 2 North Riverside Plaza. I like the original name better. The Chicago Daily News building, as it was called, was completed back in 1929, designed by Halliburton and Root. You have the beautiful bas-relief carvings there in the limestone wrapping around the base of the structure. The Chicago Daily News was a huge newspaper company in the city that had been around for more than a century before they folded back in 1978. And if you keep your eyes in the background to our right behind the old Daily News, you have the taller, glassier building there in the background, 500 West Madison, that some people say kind of remind them of an oversized cash register. Others say that building reminds them of a waterfall. It was completed back in 1987 and designed by German-born Chicago-based architect Helmut Jahn. Now you can clearly see below the buildings here to our right. Not to the basement, but to the train tracks. All the buildings here to our right along the river are built atop air rights. And that means the developers in fact bought the air above the train tracks from the railroad companies in order to build and develop buildings above that space. The columns, they just come down on either side of the track, right in the middle of the train platform. So we just passed Gateway Center 1, here to our right is its twin, Gateway Center 2. Built between 1965 to 68, international in their design, Skidmore, Owings & Merrill were the architects. The tracks below, they lead to and from Union Station. That's going to be the short classical building about a half a block to our right in this gap from 1925. Now back in 1925. Now originally there was supposed to be a tower on top of that building. However, because of the Great Depression and then the Second World War, that tower was never ever added. A few years ago they tried to reactivate that plan, but it really went nowhere. Right now we're going beneath Adams Street, aka Route 66. And at one time, there was a beautiful grand concourse for Union Station and stood directly here to our right. But it was foolishly torn down back in 1969 and replaced with the uninspiring Gateway Center 3 here in 1971. Then we're going to have this short international box of a building to our right, which was originally home to the Mid-America Commodities Exchange. Now, when you have an exchange, you need a trading room floor. And when you have a trading room floor, you don't want a lot of support columns in that space. Those columns get in the way of your hand signals, the buying and the selling and whatnot. So instead of using a lot of columns inside the space, the X's going around the outside are doing the majority of the supporting. It's called X bracing. A lot like the John Hancock Center on North Michigan Avenue. John Hancock is vertical, the building we just passed was horizontal. And here to our right, we have the fourth and final Gateway Center building from 1983 by James DeStefano, who worked for Skidmore at that time. You have the graceful curve here in the facade of the building. You have the slight bend in the river in front of us. You have the green glass. You have the green water. There was supposed to be a twin for this building right on the other side of it along Canal Street. That twin was never ever constructed. Now, as soon as we clear Van Buren, we're going to have this mega monolith of the building coming up here on the right-hand side, which is in fact the former main post office for the city of Chicago. Built in phases, it was finally completed back in 1932 and designed by Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White. It was the world's busiest and biggest post office. Chicago needed the biggest as we were the mail order and catalog capital of the world, with stores like Sears, Marshall Field, Montgomery Ward, Spiegel using catalogs in their heyday. The building itself is 2.7 billion square feet of space. Chicago is also the railroad capital of this country. The building sits in the perfect spot on top of train tracks. They can easily load freight cars with mail. The building itself, however, was decommissioned back in 1996. It's been empty ever since. It was bought at auction 6 years ago for only $25 million by William Davies out of Europe. And I'll tell you his plans in just one moment.
Riêng
25 million nhưng mà bị depression.
Now, William Davies has some pretty interesting plans for the rehab of that building and for the redevelopment of the surrounding area. The brick building here to our right more than likely eventually would get torn down. The plan development went before the Chicago Plan Commission just last year. It passed unanimously. I have no problem saying I'm a big nerd. In fact, I embrace my nerderdom. Took the day off for work, went down to City Hall to testify in favor of that plan before the commission and give me some information. The amendment to the Plan Development 1065 submitted by International Property Developers North America, Inc. to the property at 324 West Harrison Street. The applicant proposes to renovate the former Chicago Lane Post Office and construct 3 adjacent high-rises with maximum heights not to exceed 1,000 feet, 1,000 feet, and 2,000 feet in order to provide a mixed-use development containing approximately 10 million square feet of floor area. Such space will be developed containing approximately 1,200 hotel rooms, 6,400 residential units, 800,000 square feet of retail, and 6,000 parking spaces. Now, earlier this year, William Davies had formed a joint venture with Sterling Bay Construction in an effort to kickstart a $500 million rehab of that building. Unfortunately, about a month ago, there was an article in Crane Chicago Business saying that partnership has been dissolved. So right now, don't know exactly what the plans are for the building or for the structure. We're just going to have to wait and see. Here to our left, we have this vacant land overgrowth up until 1971. This is railroad land. It was a very nice train station on the northeast corner of the property at Harrison and Wells called Grand Central Station. Built 1890, unfortunately was torn down in 1971. There were some smaller industrial buildings right here along the river's edge as well. 1972 is when they removed the bridge that spanned the Chicago River right here at Polk Street. We can still see the abutments here on either side.
Chỗ này cũng đẹp ghê chứ mà.
Here to our left, we have River City. Now, this building may remind you all of a complex we saw about 15 minutes ago called Marina City. If it does, it should, because they were both designed by the same architect, Bertrand Goldberg. But the building here to our left is from 20 years later, from 1986. Once again, there's a small marina at the base for boaters who want to dock within that space. You can leave your boats in the water year-round behind that break wall because during the winter months, they put bubblers in the water so it doesn't freeze up. But when you have winters like we had here last year, yes, you get a lot of ice on the river. In fact, this past winter, 93% of Lake Michigan was ice covered.
Wow.
That is the most ice coverage ever on the lake since records have been kept. Now, once we get back to this general area, I'll be telling you all about a building that's only 4 stories tall. There's 4 blocks to our right. It's going to have a dark back and a red brick side right on the other side of that communications tower. I will tell you about that particular building once we get back to this area. It's somewhat of an semi-industrial area over there right now. You should visit it anyway, though, because there's an awesome old school Chicago deli over there on Jefferson called Manny's Deli. They make thick corned beef sandwiches, green potato pancakes, and milk beef stew. Manny's Deli on Jefferson in between Taylor and Roosevelt. That one time a bridge, this spanned the river right here at Taylor Street. You can still see the abutments here on the side. It was taken out many, many years ago. When I say many years ago it was taken out, I'm talking like 1926 it was removed. The reason it was taken out, well, if you look at the south branch of the river in front of us, you can see how very straight the south branch of the river in front of us is. The river in this area was not always this straight. It used to kind of meander, kind of do this kind of banana arcing curve here. Because of that curve and meander, it caused an obstruction on the river that was kind of hazardous to navigation. There was a part of Daniel Burnham's 1909 plan of Chicago, which called for the straightening of this section of the Chicago River. That's what was done between about 1926 until 1930. So they dug a brand new river channel from Polk Street, a block behind us, to 18th Street, a half mile in front of us. They filled in the old channel. Now we're currently in the South Loop area of Chicago. There's a lot of brand new development in this area. Like you have the Roosevelt Collection here to our left. This is from 2009. You have some stores and shops that are finally filling up. You have some residential units there on top. Originally they were going to be condos. They had to convert them into rental just because of the market. One reason that I like to come into this area is I get a chance to point out the old Pullman rail cars here on the right-hand side. Of course, Pullman is a part of the South Side right now, but originally it was its own independent working town. When it was originally incorporated, it was annexed into the city back in the 1890s. And we have the cluster of high-rises a quarter of a mile to our east or to the left. And just imagine that 15 years ago, 95% of the buildings that you see in that area did not exist. This is brand new development. It's all residential development in this area. Now, of course, you have stores and shops that have finally started to make their way here into this area, and restaurants as well. And we still have a vast amount of vacant land directly here to our left. Up until 1971, once again, this was all railroad land. That's kind of one of the reasons why the downtown core originally shot up instead of spreading out. It's because it was confined on all sides. On the east you have Lake Michigan, on the north you have the main branch of the Chicago River. Real commercial development didn't start to spread north until the Michigan Avenue Bridge in 1920. Prior to that, north of the river was predominantly residential. To the west you had the south branch of the Chicago River, and just west of the south branch you had Union Station, then you had Chicago Northwestern train station, and south of downtown, you have 4 train stations. You had Grand Central, LaSalle Street, Dearborn Street, and Illinois Central train station, all their tracks. You can still see the railroad ties embedded within the concrete directly here to our left. So there's a lot of potential for this acreage. I hope that when it's done, it's very, very, very dense. They don't have no streets over here. There are really no sewers, no pipes, no electricity. They have to put in all the infrastructure, so they're pretty much starting from scratch whatever goes over here. So hopefully it's very high density. But we have these 2 railroad bridges directly here in front of us. The one that's in the up position right now, it is no longer used. That is the old St. Charles with no green space at all. So he fought very, very hard for some new park space for the neighborhood. Unfortunately, he did not live to see that happen. He passed back in the mid-1990s. However, when some land did become available and it was allocated to be green space, it was named after him. The park itself was expanded by about 10 or 11 acres over the past couple of years. Just last year, they finished building that brand new field house you see there in the background. But you have a kayak and canoe launch coming up here right along the Chicago River. They can be locked up there in that shed as well. So there's been some progress in this section of town. We have the 18th Street Bridge directly in front of us. Now, if we kept going in this direction here for a while longer, just a while longer, 10 days to 2 weeks, eventually we make it down to the Gulf of Mexico. And I will tell you how. Out of Lake Michigan and down the main branch of the Chicago River. Down the south branch where we are right now, about 4 miles down, it flows into the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal. That canal then flows into the Des Plaines River, the Des Plaines River to the Illinois River, the Illinois River to the Mississippi River, and down to the Gulf we would go. Before the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal was built, the Illinois and Michigan Canal was used to transport goods. Another reason that I like to come down to this area is just because I absolutely love this bridge, the Amtrak Bridge. It's in fact one of the old Pennsylvania Railroad bridges. It's from 1914. You have the giant concrete counterweights that you see there on top. Those concrete counterweights, they come down. The entire middle section of the bridge rises up along the track. The bridge tender house on top is no longer in use. However, it remains there because it protects some of the machinery of the bridge itself, which is original. They now have cameras and radio and whatnot that raise and lower this bridge. And right on the other side of the bridge, the next street over, you're gonna have Canal Street, right at Canal and the Chicago River. You have Lawrence Fisheries. They're open 24/7. They have really good shrimp. Lawrence Fisheries. But right now, we're about to make that turnaround. I'm gonna stop talking here, but just a few moments. You're gonna have a spectacular view of the downtown skyline there to our north, especially as soon as we clear the 18th Street Bridge and go around that curve. Gonna have a picturesque postcard view of the downtown skyline. Hope you all enjoyed the city. Hope you all enjoyed the tour, and welcome to Chicago. And if you all have any questions for me at all, certainly feel free to ask. I will do my best to answer them.
Thank you.
400 North. That's 4 miles north of where we are right now. Only a few buildings survived that fire, including the Chicago Water Tower and pumping station at the corner of Michigan Avenue and Chicago Avenue, completed 2 years before the fire. Old St. Pat's Church downtown survived the fire. Ironically enough, so did Miss O'Leary's house. The house is not there today, but it did survive the fire. Her house was on the street, the barn was in the back to the east, the window blowing out the southwest, out of the prairie, away from her home. No, a cow did not take over a lantern in the barn. The story was fabricated by a newspaper reporter to sell more papers. And she was a part of the immigrant population, she was Irish Catholic, she was used as a scapegoat. They don't know exactly how that fire began. There are a few theories. The building directly before it, the building in front of it that you see here in front of us on the right-hand side, the stone-clad structure that has a 30-foot aluminum statue on top, that is the Chicago Board of Trade, the oldest board in the world, bless you, founded back in 1848. That particular building, though, is Art Deco. It was completed back in 1930. It was designed by Halliburton and Booth. The 30-foot statue on top, that is the Roman goddess Ceres, the goddess of grain. And right behind it, the lollipop shape with the statue, there's a postmodern addition and annex from 1980, designed by architect Calvin Young. The building says case on top. It was designed by C.F. Murphy and Associates. Again, it was completed in 1969. And again, it was the tallest building inside of the loop. Insurance exchange building. It was built 2 different phases, 2 halves. We're looking at the later half right now that was completed back in 1928. Designed by Graham, Anderson, Probe, and White. It's 100% identical to the northern half of the building. It was completed back in 1912 and designed by D.H. Burnham and Company. That was Daniel Burnham's architectural firm. The stage building is in fact designed to accommodate about 20 additional floors being added on top if they ever wanted to do so. And I absolutely love the modern residential high-rise coming up with the articulated balconies. There's a dot dash pattern there, and the balconies across the face. The building is this building address 235 West Van Buren, designed by Perkins. The building just goes by its address. And of course, I had to come up with a few nicknames of my own, like the Morris Code building or the file cabinet building, because it looks like an oversized file cabinet that someone forgot to put in the drawers on.
Cabinet building.
Earlier this year, someone called it Jenga Tower, like the game Jenga. And a little kid a couple of weeks ago called it the Lego building. He said it looks like Legos stacked on top of one another. But again, right now, we're about to make our way here to East Congress Parkway, which does go directly to the third floor of the old state post office. They did not touch a hole in the building for the road roadway. The building was designed with a hole in it at the third floor. The future extension of the road came 25 years later. The tall, pink granite building here to our right with the 5 white barrels on top, when completed back in 1990, was the world's tallest three-frame building. At 65 floors, 961 feet tall. Office building that goes just by its address, 311 South Blackford Drive. The barrels on top, they serve no structural purpose, they're there for decoration only. They're not water tanks, not white blue. This is the downtown street grid that they painted here on the side of the building. We have the south branch of the river. That red dot represents this building relationship to the street grid. We have the north branch and the tower. Tallest building in the world, 1974 until 1998. Designed by architect Bruce Graham and engineer Fosler Khan, a skid for Owens and Merrill. It's a 108-story tall office building rising to a height of 1,451 feet to the roof. Sailboats. Here to our right is no longer the Mercantile Exchange because the first water trade a couple of years ago. But notice how the corners of both towers are serrated like a knife, giving you 16 corner offices per floor times 2 buildings times 40 floors. No fighting amongst the executives as to who gets the best view of the best office, plus corner offices command premium rents because you have views that go in one direction. And again, we have all 3 of those bridges there in front of us in the up position at this time. White. As you'll notice, it looks like a giant chair or a peak throne. You gotta have the seat portion about the theater and the stage. You have the wings in the building, which is the armrest. Then you gotta have the tower, which is the backrest or the peak throne. Pretty much, you're gonna have 730 feet of office building rising up here to our left. In the next 24 months, you're gonna have 500 feet of residential there. Eventually 950 here, or will be taller, and 750. An area under a major transformation right now. And once again, directly in front of us, directly here to our right with a graceful carbon building from 1928, designed by the Burnham brothers. The sons of city planner and architect Daniel Burnham, was originally home and headquarters for the Midwest division of Union Carbide, makers of Ever-Ready battery. It's rumored that the Burnham brothers got their influence from a champagne bottle, which of course is green with gold foil around top. Also realized it was designed and built during Prohibition. They were thumbing their nose at that. It is now the Hard Rock Hotel. In the last century, it is now a club quarters hotel. And where they're doing the facade maintenance work here to our right, we have the neoclassical London Guaranteed and Accident building from 1923. It's being to our left earlier. It's clad in 6 different shades of white glazed terracotta that is fireproof baked clay. And the Spanish revival in its design was the French Renaissance elements. The section again here along the river is 1921. The northern half is 1924. And down Michigan Avenue to our left with that yellow onion-shaped dome on top, looking Moorish in its design, that is from 1929. It was originally the Madonna Athletic Club. It was for the Shriners. It was a men's club and hotel. They fared too well because of the Great Depression, with the ability to receivership and then bankruptcy. It is now the Hotel Intercontinental. This short 6-story building here coming up to our left is just called the Gleacher Center that serves as the downtown campus for the University of Chicago. None of the classrooms in this building have any windows because they felt that windows being a distraction to the students. All they needed were blinds and not a blank wall. Blank wall in the middle. You have parking and retail at the base. From there to 43 are offices. From there to 44 to 92 are condominiums. 94 is the observation occupancy by the end of the year. Now it is off for the season, but here to our left is Centennial Fountain from 1989. And it was built to pay tribute to the 100th anniversary of the founding from, meaning it was then being sucked back into the intake cribs and pipes and causing people to get sick and die from cholera and typhus. Young. That was pre-water filtration plant, pre-sewer treatment plant. So they reversed the flow of the river so that it would flow south. The way they did that was by digging the sanitary and ship canal 1890 to 1900. That canal is a bit deeper than the bottom of the river. It's on a slight angle that begins just on the west side of a natural subcontinental divide, which is like 5 miles west of where we are right now. Now, I do have a bit of a sad. Hopefully it turns into a happy. Right now it's kind of a sad. Directly here to our left, behind that white plywood wall where it says Case Foundation, a few years ago, they were planning on building the tallest building in North America on that site. They began construction and then they stopped. The building was going to look just like this. It was called the Chicago Spire, designed by Spanish architect Santiago Calatrava. It was going to be a 150-story tall condo building rising to a height of 2,000 feet. It was going to have 1,100 condominiums and just as much parking underground. They finished the foundation. They sold 40% of the units, but then the economy tanked. They couldn't get the financing. $1.25 billion it was going to cost to build. The developer, Gary Kelleher, was from Ireland. Thanks to Ireland, economically speaking, worse than they were here in the States. So he suffered here and over there. That site has been dormant ever since. Earlier this year, he made the agreement that was signed out by the judge. He had to this October to come up with about $100 million to pay off the creditors with an extension available until March of next year. A couple of weeks ago, a vote was taken by those creditors. There was a yay vote. They all liked the reorganization plan. It was signed off by the judge. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. I do know the majority of the neighborhood here really want to see the building get built because it will put the neighborhood on the map. Not only that, they're nervous that if a different developer is holding that land, instead of building one tall, slender tower, they will build 2 shorter, more squat, dumpy buildings on that site, and no one wants to see that. Now, right now, we are about to redock here momentarily, so I'll kindly ask anyone standing up right now to just quickly take your seat for a moment.
Okay. 2 minutes.